Hey, security peeps, it's Renee Small here, and we have another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity. I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Chris Foulon. Chris, say hi to the people.
Hey, everyone.
And our special fabulous guest today is Mike Roth. Say hi to everyone, Mike.
Hey, everyone. How you doing?
So we are going to jump right in. Mike has a really interesting background, went to the University of Texas at Austin, and then segued up, has an engineering degree, had his own private equity company.
Yep.
And then now has a cybersecurity company. So definitely juicy background that we want to hear more about. So Mike, if you could just tell us how you got to where you are, what made you want to break into security, and just give the folks a background about, how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks. Well, appreciate being on the show here. This is a great treat for me. So really eager to share. I actually started my career in the oil and gas business. I was when I was at UT, I was trying to figure out which direction I wanted to go with my career. And my family has a history in the oil and gas business. So I said, well, I'll go into it. It'll be a great way to start. And I know quite a bit about it. And so I spent the first 10 years as a petroleum engineer, working for an international company and then also a smaller company. Had just a plethora of experiences, got to travel all over the country, and then but I knew that that's not really where I wanted my career to go long term. I knew I wanted to transition out eventually. So I teamed up with some folks. We started an investment firm to invest in different oil and gas assets, and that was sort of my positioning to sort of get out of the industry and then hopefully do well there and roll some of those proceeds over into launching a business in technology. But I really actually wasn't sure what type of technology business I wanted to go into. I was looking at maybe getting some new education to try and transition, a little bit smoother, or being the entrepreneur that I was saying, well, I could go just do it and try my hand, which can be dangerous. But ultimately, what happened was I had a really fortuitous encounter. I reached out to the Texas Advanced Computing Center because I was trying to figure out all the hype between AI and machine learning and blockchain and all the buzzwords. And being the engineer, I was trying to just get to the bottom of it, and contacted TAC, as it's known, which is a division of UT Austin, and got in touch with the director there. His name's Dan Zione. You can look him up. He's just a brilliant, phenomenal man. We hit it off, and he said, "Look, we're looking for a guy like you to come and commercialize some of the innovations that we've created here to protect our organization." And I said, well, I'm kind of looking for someone like you to partner up with, and so that was the start of it.
So what made you interested in security per se as a field versus any of the other verticals within IT in general?
Yeah, very honestly, it wasn't by design. As an engineer, in my previous career, when I was, we have so many different SCADA systems, and there's data just being transmitted everywhere. I'd always wondered how does this stay secure? I mean, anybody can sort of hack or breach this information, and it's very valuable. So I've always been curious, and as Dan and I were talking, which technologies were ripe for commercialization, it seemed that security was the area that where they really had a pretty long, I guess, lifespan of technologies where we can continue to try to commercialize, see if there's a product market fit or a service market fit. So we jumped in. Our first solution was multi-factor authentication. So said, well, look, let's go try it out and see what happens. And I've actually fallen in love with this industry. I think it feels good to know that I'm doing something good every day with my time. And coming from a commodity-driven business, now going to a business that seems like it's on its way up perpetually, that's also a good feeling.
So how did you, since you were really breaking into the industry a year and a half ago, what kind of research did you do prior to making the decision, and how do you keep up to speed with everything going on in security today?
Yeah, I read a lot. I read as much as I can. I'm constantly, trying to figure out where's the best source of information. What are the people who are leading this space? What are they concerned about? How are they thinking about whether it's a new breach or just in general, or how they're thinking about protecting their own organizations? There's actually a really great organization in Dallas called infoseccareer.org. And I'm actually a mentee of one of the founders of that organization, and they mentor tons of folks who are really interested, no matter where you are in your career. There's actually a gentleman that I met the other day. He retired actually from Homeland Security, and now he's breaking into cybersecurity specifically, and he's a mentee. So that's been really, really great for me, and just being a student in that capacity. So that's one way. Yeah.
So what would you say for the entrepreneurs looking to come into the cybersecurity industry? How should they approach looking at this industry compared to other industries?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's not easy. I mean, breaking into any industry, as we know, presents its challenges. There are lots of companies out there. They all have different solutions, whether it's a product or a service. So if you're an entrepreneur trying to break in, first I would try and connect with people who have already experienced some success and have kind of been down the road, to try and understand before you jump in, where can you actually add value? For us, knowing that multi-factor authentication is something that's been around for a while, so we really kind of had to take a different spin on it. We're still trying to figure that out, really, to be honest with you. I mean, it's you got to find your niche, see where the market resonates, and but I would also say it doesn't necessarily have to be a product. It could be, and you don't necessarily have to be super technical. If you're coming from another industry, and let's say you have business analytics skills, or you have corporate development or marketing skills, I think trying to figure out which organizations or whether they're small or medium sized that need your type of talent, and it may not be that you start the company yourself. Maybe you team up like I have with an organization that has a lot of credibility and tenure, and there are tons of opportunities like that at universities and research centers across the country.
You made a point just now about making sure that whatever, as an entrepreneur, that your tool or your product or service has a value add.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that the folks that are listening really take that in, even if you're not an entrepreneur. So, usually if I'm working with the executives and leaders and teams when it comes to placing talent, and being that value add and that solution is definitely what will help you break into the industry from an employee standpoint, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, just across the board. So I just want to kind of highlight that aspect again from multiple different angles, that being that value add is what really get your foot in the door, regardless of what, whichever way you're breaking in.
Yeah, and to add to that, if you're applying for a role and you meet the minimum requirements of that role, don't just talk about how you fit that role, but say how you fit that role and then how all your additional other skills tie into making you even better at that role, but shows the diversity that you might have in tackling a wide variety of problems.
I wanted to segue, this is a perfect segue into, Mike, you bring such a unique experience having that private equity background.
Mm-hmm.
So how has that, because that's a skill that many people breaking into security that we've seen so far don't necessarily bring to the table. So share a little bit about the transferable skills that you've been able to take from running that firm into what you're doing today.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, I didn't quite connect the dots until really a few weeks ago. I was reading a report recently that said that I think we're all aware that there's a cybersecurity talent gap. There's this big demand, and but I was reading that also within that gap, there's sort of a deficiency in understanding business processes. So how do cybersecurity activities map well into the enterprise needs? And coming from the private equity side of things, and which actually I did a little bit of VC type investing as well. It gave me a really interesting perspective, and one that I never thought that I would have as a former engineer. And that was when you have to shift your entire mentality into, if I invest $1 into this particular endeavor, this particular product or service, what is actually being generated, and really focusing on that, the intersection, which is really the definition of value. So if I put $1 in today, am I getting $2 out tomorrow? Or if I put $1 in today, does that extrapolate somehow to another business process or business function that then creates even more value? And so as I think about how I approach Evo and what we're doing, I'm constantly looking for, and the conversations that I have aren't about, hey, you need to come use our stuff. It's more about, hey, what is it that we can do to you? What's important to you? What are the things that are particular to your organization? And if what we're doing maps into that well, where there's actually an exchange of value, then that's when I get excited, and my team gets excited, and I think that's how going back to what you're saying, Christophe. I mean, that's how I would approach things as an entrepreneur. But yes, I was fortunate to have that investor experience, so it gives us a little bit of an advantage, I think. Just getting started with our new company here.
Even coming from the investor background, how do you think organizations, maybe from that perspective, handle how they tackle risk and security to their organization from an investor standpoint?
Yeah, that's actually it's a great question. Within the last week, actually, I was talking with a friend and VC investor, and he leads rounds for companies, and he's an angel investor, seed investor. And what we were talking about was, before a company goes for their Series A, or if you're established organization and you're going for private equity capital, previously the investor wasn't necessarily thinking about, what is the risk? How do I assign risk to the cyber posture of this, or security posture of this organization? And incidents have just emerged so fast, and they can happen so fast, and really cripple an organization, that it's actually emerged to the top of the chain in many situations on okay, I really need to understand what is the footprint or the fingerprint of this organization before I invest in it. And then once I do invest in it, what is actually going to happen going forward? How are they going to protect my investment from a cybersecurity standpoint? And actually to even drive that message home, I was a early adopter and user in an organization in their product, and they were hacked, and my personal information was actually leaked. And so I saw it. Not only have I seen it from an investor side, but I've also experienced it. So I think that's something that is going to be really important moving forward. Yeah.
Does your company, with I guess you, with the background that you have, help companies do that, like assess the risk? And since you are bringing this unique set of experiences and skills to the table.
Yes, absolutely. So when we first started the company, we were focused really on just getting our feet wet, and it was more of a product focus. I mentioned with our multi-factor authentication tool, but I'm really passionate about the professional services side and really helping organizations. That's really satisfying and fulfilling for me. So, and in fact, the conversation I just referenced was exactly, I'm polling different investors right now to understand, how they view this process, what they think would be valuable to them, and what wouldn't be, so that we know how to develop the right tools and steps going forward. Yeah.
Maybe this could be taken from both a candidate view as well as an entrepreneurial view. Do you assess organizations that you're looking to work with, whether as a partner or as them being a third party to your supply chain, how that risk transfers to your organization, or from a client aspect, how their risk posture will affect their career?
Yeah, I think if I understand the question correctly, I think were you asking about how organizations that we may work with, like third-party organizations, and how they plug into the security posture?
So,
yeah.
As you're evaluating organizations, do you consider their risk and how their risks add to your risks from the entrepreneurial side? And a similar vein, for candidates looking at an organization, if they work for an organization and they're in a top position and that organization has an incident, it affects their reputation. So just like a third party would affect your reputation, how do you go about looking at that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I've been thinking a lot about that recently, and really that thought stemmed from a few weeks ago. I went to an event in Baltimore. It was called Business in a Minute, and it's put on by the NSA, where cybersecurity companies, or if you're an IT company or you have some other professional services, you have an opportunity to go speak with prime contractors who work with the NSA and other federal organizations. And I really started thinking about how those contractors really must have a phenomenal program to protect all of their systems and all of the steps they take, because they're working directly for the federal government, whether it's the Department of Defense or with the FBI. And so if their footprint isn't secure, then they're a backdoor into a very sensitive situation. And so, but it doesn't just stop there. I think that translates across the board for every company, every organization. If you have, whether it's a freelancer all the way to a large service provider, if there's an attack vector on the periphery, then it's equally as important as how you view your core organization as well. So I think that once I really put that together, because I wasn't really thinking of it at that depth before, and it's kind of kept me up at night a little bit. I got to be honest with you. I mean, it's a very serious situation, and so we're taking that very seriously as well.
Yeah, it's been recently demonstrated where a subcontractor for Customs and Border Patrol, their subcontractor got leaked traveler information, so pictures and license plate pictures and things like that of individuals who have crossed the border. That recently came to light.
Yeah, I'm sure there are many others too. It's
it seems like so many breaches, that's how, these breaches happen. It tends to be a third party. If you think about the biggest ones, I can't remember, was it Target that had the HVAC vendor, right?
Yep. That's right.
And all of them, not all, but as we hear, the two things that I thought was very interesting as I started to do research in this space a few years ago and continue to, is that, it's usually some third party, vendor or insider, some kind of insider threat, one way or the other. And those seem to make up the highest percentages of the breaches. So it's some backdoor into these large organizations. That's how they end up in the positions that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
As one of our social engineer guests recently mentioned, if you can social engineer the human, you can find a way in.
Yep.
Yeah. The great thing that I'm fortunate about is that the TAC, or the Texas Advanced Computing Center, they're they have world-class folks. They really do. They in fact, they just are provisioning the 5th fastest supercomputer on the planet, which was a result of a big federal grant. And so I feel really fortunate. Their head of security is on our co-founding team. Is a co-founder in our company, and so I've had the ability to get schooled up on things that are really important really fast. And so I feel fortunate there. But and they see a lot. Their machines get hammered all day long, and they've been around for a while, so they've got a lot of experience as well. So it helps that you have that perspective in real life.
So if a company or a person, because there are tons of people that want to become entrepreneurs and start their own, their own shops, this seems like you said, you were looking for a partnership opportunity. What are some of the things some advice that you would give to a person who's looking to either put up a shingle or stand up a building, and do what you did, because you're bigger than a shingle.
Well, it was it was intimidating for me, to be honest, even when I made the phone call to TAC, because I didn't know anything about really what they were doing, and I had no idea how big they were. What I did know is that, hey, I have two choices. I need to go and get additional education, or I need to learn from people who have been there. And I love entrepreneurship and innovation. And so I would say, think in a nonlinear manner. The right route for someone looking to enter the space may not be that you have to go and get tons of certifications, although I do plan on getting certifications in the future when I'm eligible. But it could be that look to your local university, look to other organizations that are in your area that may need some help. Figure out a way to leverage your skill sets so that you can add value, like we discussed. And perhaps that's what leads you into a larger opportunity that is more long-term. And it could be that you end up starting your own consulting company. It could be that you're actually developing products and services But I think the biggest challenge there is just it's the fear part. It's being willing to ask and take that risk and take that chance and reach out. I've found that I've been denied and I've been told no more times than I can count, but there are many people out there that would absolutely love to share their knowledge and be willing to help. And so if you're reaching out in that context, I think you can create as many doors for yourself as possible.
Since you mentioned being told no, it's often a question that we get from candidates. I've applied at this many jobs and I got turned down this many times. How many no's did you get? How many times did you get the door closed on your face? And so tell us about that journey a little bit.
Yeah, so that really goes back to the investor days after I came out of my engineering stint. And a lot of my focus was trying to find opportunities to invest in, and then I had to go raise the capital to do that. So it was kind of this scary dance where I was finding opportunities while at the same time having to raise the money, especially trying to get started. And then we ended up raising a larger fund. But it's when I call somebody up and say, hey, or I try and grab a coffee or lunch and I say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm interested in talking to you about this opportunity. And they say, well, we don't know you. And, why should we trust you? And so it just takes time, and it takes persistence. And it takes the knowing that if you keep going, you will be able to manifest your future. You really will. And it's just thinking and concentrating and focusing on that every day. So if you're I think the last guest you had talked about how many times they had, applied for a position. I don't think there's a magic formula, but what I would try to do is figure out, really, go back to the most simple form of how do you add value? So write out your skill sets, figure out what they are, match your skill sets, whether they're new from a cybersecurity standpoint or old from your previous career. Figure out which organizations map well into that balance of skill sets, and I think that might give you a little bit better chance to make some progress and get some traction.
I think that ties into our last question just perfectly. You could take it from either the candidate point of view or the entrepreneurial point of view, but any last piece of sage advice that you would offer someone following in your footsteps?
Let's see. I think entrepreneurship in general is a little crazy. So, just be prepared for the ride. But I think the biggest piece of advice is that don't go it alone. Try and find as much help as possible, whether that's mentorship, whether that's partnerships like we've done. And I'm doing both of those things actually. And really being willing to open up your mind and your I guess potential to the guidance of others who have been in the industry for a while and know probably where you should spend your time and where you shouldn't. So I think that's been the most helpful thing for me over the last 12 months, far and beyond.
Wow.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
that was great. That was great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome advice for sure. Well, we are at the top of the half hour. So, Mike, I would like to thank you for coming on and sharing this knowledge and providing us with this unique perspective. Because, like I said before, Chris, have we ever had on anyone like Mike? I don't think so.
No, we haven't had an entrepreneur on. I mean, Jules took it from an amazing sales director. We also had Cornelius that had a sales background, but never an entrepreneur. So first, and hopefully we'll have many more following behind you now.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Thanks, Mike. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Take care. You too.